Welcome to Real World Peaceful Parenting, a podcast for parents that are tired of yelling, threatening, and punishing their kids. Join mom and master certified parent coach Lisa Smith as she gives you actionable, step-by-step strategies that'll help you transform your household from chaos to cooperation. Let's dive in.
Welcome to today's episode. I am so energized to be with you here today, and I'm super excited because I've got a very special guest joining me. Hive member, devoted mama, and peaceful parenting trailblazer, drum roll please, meet Stephanie. Stephanie reached out to me recently with a podcast idea that stopped me in my tracks in the best way. It was thoughtful, insightful, and asked a question I think so many of us have wondered in those quiet, hard parenting moments. Now, you've probably heard me say, maybe a dozen times, that when your child storms with you, it's because they feel safe. And that it's actually a parenting compliment, right? You've heard me say this. And I feel this deeply in my bones. As the mother of an almost 21-year-old, which is hard to believe, after years of working at Peaceful Parenting, when my son struggles, he runs to me, not away from me. And I love that. It speaks to the connection that I've worked to bring into our relationship. But what if that's not the whole story? What if sometimes a storm is about more than just safety? What if it's a signal that something else is going on? A need that's not being met, a change that's thrown them off, or even a connection gap that we didn't notice. And that's what Stephanie's bringing to us today. And I can't wait to dive in. So welcome, Stephanie. I'm so happy to have you here. Tell us, what were you noticing that led to this idea?
Thank you, Lisa. I'm really excited to be here. I have had so many parents that I meet with and that I work with. Many of them say in the very beginning, they're talking about how their kids are having a lot of meltdowns and they storm a lot. And then they say, oh gosh, but I know that means that they feel safe. And so I know I'm doing something right, which I agree with them. Yes, absolutely. They feel safe with you. But also I try to lead them in the being curious about it. There might be something behind that. And we don't want to just sit back and go, oh, great. My kid's storming and this just means they're fantastically safe. And I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be. And this is wonderful because yes, they feel safe enough to do that with you, but it could be a signal. Like you said, it could be a signal for them that they aren't exactly feeling safe and they don't know how to say that. Maybe something's going on at school, maybe just in their development, things are changing and they don't know what's happening and they don't know how to express it. And so I just encourage parents to, yes, be happy that your kids are willing to be open with you, but also take that as a cue to kind of dig a little deeper and see, is there something that I might be missing or that maybe is my connection? How has my connection been?
Right.
And don't just take that as face value, just to always dig deeper and always be curious as to what's going on.
I love how you articulate this so thoughtfully. You're picking up on something that takes many of us years to see. And it's that storming doesn't only mean safety. It can mean confusion, change, disconnection, big negative emotions, resentment, jealousy, feeling left out, feeling unheard. And that as parents, we can't just assume, right? We have to pause and ask what else could be going on here. And you laid that out for us so beautifully. And I want to take a moment to expand on what you brought up because it's so important. I believe, and I coach, that storms happen in safe places, right? And what do we really mean by that? And, when your child storms with you, it's because you're their anchor. You're their emotional home base. It's like they've been carrying around a big, bulging emotional backpack all day. And when they get to you, they finally get to unpack it. But and this is the key, it doesn't mean we stop there, right? Which is what you're saying. It's not a license to ignore the storm. It's an invitation to get curious. And let me say that again because it's so important. Just because your child feels safe to fall apart doesn't mean that the falling apart isn't trying to tell you something. That's the shift that I think you're focusing on. That's the moment where peaceful parenting really begins, not in the calm, but in the chaos. And when we need to learn to choose to wonder instead of react, right? Get curious, not furious.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's talk about what that something more could be. So Steph, in your experience, what are some of the things that you realized might be contributing to your own family's big feelings beyond just the safety?
Well, I notice many times when kids come home from school, my kids are not immune to this, but they have to unpack their emotional backpack. And many times it's pretty standard. So, another reason why this is important is because we want to learn our kids and learn their rhythm and learn what is a normal storm and what might be a little bit different. That might be, you're like, wow, that's not a normal kind of, unpacking of the backpack. Something must be going on. So my younger son, he'll be 6 pretty soon here. He typically comes home and, he's pretty good about unpacking it in a calm kind of storm. But sometimes it'll be the simplest thing that he just breaks down into crocodile tears and just cannot get it together. And I'm all, my first thought is, okay, did he have a rough day at school today? Did he sleep enough last night? How are they in the morning? Did I connect with them enough in the morning? Did I rush them off without having conversation? What was off that could have, it's almost like, it doesn't take much, especially as kids are growing. If you put a tiny little crack in the day, it could eventually be an avalanche of something later.
Right.
So I start by in the morning, how things were in the morning, and I just kind of run through it and see. It doesn't always mean that I know exactly what happened because he's 5, almost 6. He's not always going to be able to articulate that. But what it does for me, and what I would encourage parents to do, is by taking that inventory of the connection, what happened between siblings or how the morning went, whatever, it puts me in a place to be able to handle the storm. It's not really what I want to say, but like maybe accept it in a way that's not so like, what's going on kind of thing. It's just like this, I may not be able to pinpoint it, but it gives me a little more cushion on my end to be able to be that safe space for them and, kind of figure out if I need to have a conversation or dig a little deeper.
Yes.
And I think it depends on your kid too. So like, yeah, you just need to learn your kid, basically.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think what you're talking about is the transition that a lot of parents make from being the judge to the scientist, right? I like to think about taking off the black robe, right? Where we're judging our kids. He's doing it to be difficult. He's giving me a hard time. We're taking their behavior personally. I've been looking forward to seeing you all day and you get in the car, right? And you're being bad. And then we get triggered. We get stuck in our middle brain. And the next thing we're storming alongside them. Starts out as being the judge. And I like to say that when a storming child meets a storming parent, there's going to be an explosion 100% of the time. So I think what you're offering is the transition from being a judge to a scientist. And I always think about putting on a white lab coat with a clipboard where you're curious. Scientists are curious by nature, right? They're not quick to jump to conclusions. They might have a hypothesis, but they look at the data before drawing the conclusion. And so what I heard you beautifully say is that you've developed a checklist maybe for each of your kids. And when they're storming, especially if it's category 3, 4, or 5, Then you start going through the checklist as the scientist, not the judge. Like, I wonder what happened here. Let me see if I can ask some questions. Let me assess. Oh yeah, we had baseball practice last night until 9:30 and they didn't get in bed until 11. And then I had trouble getting him up this morning. So he didn't have his natural downtime. So he might have gone to school completely behind the 8 ball all day. Or in another instance, like he had a fight with, a friend on the playground, or no one wanted to play flag football, or the teacher called him out in front of everybody and he got embarrassed, or he raised his hand because for once he knew the answer and didn't get called on and now he's upset. So I love how you illustrated for us that transition of judge to scientist.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. And, especially, I do this with my 20-year-old. I get the clipboard out and I put on the white lab coat, especially when he calls and he's dysregulated about something. School's about to end. They're making all their plans for next year. There's been a bit of dysregulation. But at least at 20, my son can articulate. Yours at 6, you have to do a lot more data collecting because of the underdeveloped brain. So it's just great that I love that you said, learn your kid, don't assume, learn, and then develop your checklist and then start working through the checklist, right?
Right. Yeah. Because when, every kid's going to be different. And, some kids, no matter how strong our connection is, some kids are just born with strong will. Maybe they're born, whether it be like, through the history of our family, and maybe they are more high prone to stress. And, sometimes I can ask one child, hey, what happened at school today? And I might be able to get an answer. My younger one, I can ask that. He's not going to answer me, so you can't, it's not a cookie cutter kind of thing. You really have to put in the work to know your kids. And that's why, it always comes down to connection. If you're unsure about what's going on, connect first, always. And then you can learn how to connect with your kid. And again, just because you're connecting and you're like, I'm doing this, I'm connecting, why is he still giving me a hard time? Don't take it as like, what am I doing wrong? Just, it might be their temperament. It might be just how they are, and just learn how to connect with them and then learn their way of exploring and expressing themselves in the way that they need, because it's not going to be the same for every kid.
Totally. And I want to throw out some other examples for the listener. You might have a kid that loves school and is, almost sad when the school day ends. Or you might have a kid that really does not like school, still going to go to school. So it's exhausting for him or her throughout the school day to be there. Or you might have a child who has trouble sitting still and holding it all together. I know this certainly was my guy when he was little. So the first hour when he got home from school, it was letting all that, holding it together all day, that sort of, I used to think about it as he basically held his breath all day at school. And then he needed a good hour after school to exhale. And if I could just support him and connect with him during that hour of exhaling, the rest of the night went great. Yeah. So listener, here's the thing. So many of these things go unnoticed until, as Stephanie so beautifully put it, we learn our kids, until we stop taking it personally and we get curious. And, that's really what I love about your message, Stephanie. You're reminding us that my child feels safe isn't the end of the story. It's the starting point, right? It's the starting point. Okay, we've got the connection. We've got the safety. Now, instead of getting frustrated with the storming, I'm going to put on the scientist lab coat and begin to unwind. Why is the storming there? So I want to offer a few guiding questions for our listeners that you can ask yourself when your child is storming. And this is where one of the most powerful mantras in peaceful parenting comes in. And I want to share it right here. It's a phrase I've coined: get curious, not furious. So I want to say that again: get curious, not furious. This single phrase has saved so many parents from going down the storming spiral. Stephanie, I know will agree with me 1,000%. When you see your kids starting to storm, I beg you not to take it personally. Do not get swept up in it. Do not become the judge of yourself or your kid. Instead, pause and get curious. Literally, sometimes, y'all, I literally see myself putting on the white lab coat in my mind. I had a coach once that taught me this concept of, she's a friend of mine, and she taught me, this revolved around weight loss, but it can be brought over into parenting. Instead of being the judge in the, big black robe where you sit up on the dais and you pound your gavel and judge yourself or your kids, you become the scientist, again, with the clipboard where you're curious. And, this one change alone, if all you ever did was stop taking your kids storming personally and you got curious, not furious, it would be a complete game changer in your parenting. Wouldn't you agree, Stephanie?
1,000%. Yes. And even with staying on the weight loss analogy, you need to analyze things as you move forward, because when you start a situation like a weight loss or with your child, and as they're storming, and what you learn with them as they grow and as your weight loss progresses, the thing that used to work might not work anymore. So you need to reevaluate. You always have to put on that lab coat and go, okay, it's not stagnant. You're not just going to be like, this is how my kid is, and they're always going to be that way. They're going to grow, and their storms are going to change. The reasons are going to change. So you need to be able to adapt with them and grow with them as they're growing. And in that way, it's almost like it becomes so much easier because you are so in tune with, when they do something different, that you're like, this is weird.
Yep.
Instead of being like, well, what am I doing wrong? You just go, okay, what can I do to adjust? You pivot, you move forward, and you just change whatever, you tweak things here and there and see what works. And you just continue to grow with your child. So.
Totally. And this reminds me of, a story. I like to give examples. So I tell this story often because it's so profound. I had a client once, Nicole, and she had this 7-year-old little boy, and she goes to pick him up. She's running behind. It looks like it's going to rain. When she's running late, she gets super stressed. So she thinks she's going to pull into the school parking lot, and he's going to jump in the car, and he walks up to her and throws his backpack at her. And she immediately becomes a judge. You're being a brat. What are you doing? Why is this going on? You can't throw this at me. She, starts barking at him. If you leave, go pick that backpack up right now. If you leave it out and it gets wet, I'm not buying you a new backpack. And he runs and gets in the car, and he's like slumped down in the back seat. She remembers get curious, not furious. So she pauses for a moment. She gathers herself, essentially pauses and moves from judge to scientist, right? Puts on the lab coat. This is such a good visual. Gets in the car, turns to her son and says, hey, buddy, what's going on? And I remember the story so well. He looks at her and he says, Mommy, no one wanted to play with me at recess today. I wanted to play tag and no one would play. They wanted to play hide and seek. So I had to stand by the tree all by myself the whole recess. And, his tears started welling up in this little boy's eyes. And in that moment, she realized, like, everything clicked for her. The storm wasn't about being disrespectful. It was about a struggle that he'd had that day in school that had happened to him, which for a 7-year-old, being ignored at recess is a real life problem. And then not only that, but it wasn't resolved. So he stuffed all those feelings in his emotional backpack, carried him around all afternoon, right? He's not going to raise his hand and go to the front of the class and say, excuse me, everyone, I need to get this off my chest. Right? So he carries it around, and it probably multiplies while he's stressing over it. He sees her. She's the safe place. So he throws the backpack as a signal to the word you used. Help, SOS, see me, connect with me, ask me what happened, because I don't know. The backpack is the way I get your attention, albeit it's not ideal, right? So she says to him, oh, buddy, it sounds like you were frustrated. And I remember her telling me, Lisa, in that moment, he looked at me like I understood him, like I could see into his soul. And she said that connection, I will never forget that moment. It's been like 10 years since this person has been my client. And I remember this story like it's yesterday, because if she had focused on the behavior, she would have missed the signal. She would have missed the opportunity to connect. You know, she could have gotten in the car and been like, listen, buddy, with blah, 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 blah. Right now, of course, later that evening, she said, hey, by the way, when we're feeling frustrated, let's not throw backpacks. But in the moment, that the throwing of the backpack wasn't the top priority of the agenda. The top priority was connection. And I see you. And I see you're struggling with something. I see that you're throwing a backpack, which you don't normally do. So you're signaling me to connect with you by getting curious, right?
Right.
I mean, is it such a great story or what?
Absolutely. And it reminds me of the reason why this kind of came up for me when I pick up my kids, I sometimes bring a treat for them, or I get something for them at home. And this day I, thought I'd play a little like, guess what I have for you at home. And my kids love strawberries. I think we single-handedly support all of these strawberry growers in my area because we can't buy enough, and so when they're not in season, it's not, it's awful. And so when they start to come in season, I bought some, and because they always ask me, do we have strawberries? And no, they don't have any. So, and it's a bummer. And so I thought he would be so excited. He's going to be so excited that I have strawberries. And so he's asking, I'm like, what do you I got something for you at home. What do you think it is? And he's giving me answers. And I'm like, nope, not that, not that. And finally they're like, well, what is it? And then I say, oh, strawberries. And he just breaks down and starts crying. I don't want that, and I'm going, what is going on? And, in that moment, like you said, I could have been like, are you kidding me? You love strawberries. I bought this for you. How ungrateful, but I remember it as clear as day where I'm passing the railroad tracks and I'm like, what's going on? Because he loves strawberries. In my mind, I'm thinking all these things and I'm like, okay, so I just let it go. I let him have his moment. We get home and I wash the strawberries and I give him some, and of course he takes them. Now, I didn't ask him because, again, he's 5 and he doesn't always just give me his reasons. So later on, he brings it up about school. And I asked him how school was. Like, how was school today? And he says, oh, well, I got a question wrong a math question wrong or something. I think it was math. And I thought, oh, that's why, because he got all the answers wrong that I was giving him. And he was upset because in school he got it wrong. So he probably felt really like, I'm wrong. I'm not smart. I don't know, and then he's not getting the answers wrong in the car. And it reminded him of that. It added to it.
Totally.
And, just giving him the space to be allowed to have those meltdowns, that's the other key, is that we don't want to shut them down because they need to be able to work through those kinds of things and those feelings and those disappointments. And if we just shut it down because we don't want to handle it, we're not giving them a chance to grow in those feelings and that situation. So that's kind of where it came from. And I thought, oh gosh, I could have gotten so mad at him about that, but It just was because of what happened earlier in the day. And I just had to wait it out, figure it out, and ask the right questions.
Totally. Or, told him he loves strawberries. Stop that right now. You love strawberries. And, but what you did beautifully is you went, he does love strawberries and he's arguing with me. So you saw it as a signal, not a defiance. And then what I also love about your story, Steph, is you paced yourself. You took your time, right? It wasn't like this had to be solved in the next 5 minutes, right? Like, okay, again, as a scientist, I'm going to collect the data. I mean, if listener, if you know about science, right, you write a hypothesis and then you collect the data and then you analyze the data and then you write the conclusion, right? So this is what you did, Stephanie. Like, he loves strawberries. He's going to be excited. I'm going to play this game. And then like, whoa, I'm collecting. Whoa, data doesn't match hypothesis. He's arguing. Then you're like, what else could be going on? But he's storming. So let's let the storm happen. Then we ask questions. Then we find out about the math. Then we draw the conclusion. Oh, He's dysregulated because, again, he got another answer wrong, which, for a kid his age, there's all this awareness happening. Like until you answer a question in class and your teacher in a very, scholarly educational way says, no, Stephanie, that is not the answer. Your brain doesn't even really know you're capable of getting answers wrong. So then you have this like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm wrong. Does that mean I'm bad? That didn't feel good. I'm uncomfortable. I thought I was smart. Like all these things float around in the kid's subconscious brain to create negative feelings that then create the action of storming.
Exactly. And, it goes back down to knowing your kid. If it were a different kid, I could probably ask maybe right then and there, something happened at school today. Cause my middle son, he'll tell me. He's very talkative and very open. So it just goes down to knowing your kid and knowing when to give him space and asking the right questions at the right time. And that comes with learning your kid with connection. It all comes down to that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the magic. And that's the point of today's episode. I would summarize with learn your kid, learn, not assume, learn, be open to learning, be open to being wrong, know they're going to change, know your different kids. Don't try to shove them all into one lane, right? Know your kid, learn your kid, and be open to being a detective, a scientist, and getting curious when something doesn't feel normal. I'm telling you, I don't love strawberries. Really get curious about what's happening underneath this behavior. What is your child really trying to communicate? That's the magic. That's the shift. And that's where the work really begins after the connection. Now, here's the truth. Without the connection, you're not going to get underneath the behavior. You're not. It's just a fact. You can take that to Vegas. So it's connection before questions or correction or redirection. That's the magic. So I want to give you listeners some questions, and Stephanie really covered most of them. So we'll just summarize these. Has there been a change recently? A new routine, a new school, a new sibling? That we could do a whole episode on the feelings that come up with a new sibling, right? Have we had real undivided connection time this week, not just shared space? Is my child struggling with a new developmental change? Could there be a skill they're missing, like transitions, emotional naming, impulse control? Am I feeling connected or distracted or overwhelmed or running on empty? My story of Nicole, it starts with her being late, stressed when she's late. It's going to rain. She doesn't want it to rain. He had soccer practice that day, so stressing about was it going to be canceled. She admitted she had a lot going on in her business at the time. Her marriage wasn't in great shape. So she was already feeling distracted, overwhelmed, and running on empty when she pulled in hot on two wheels into the parking lot, right? So it isn't just, does my kid feel connected to me, but do I feel connected to them? And am I making time for that? So, thank you, Stephanie. I love what we talked about today. And, what I hear so clearly is that you didn't just change your response, you're changing your lens. You're learning your kids, you're becoming the detective. You've moved from reacting to responding, from assuming to investigating with love. And that's real peaceful parenting in action, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it all, I couldn't have done it without you in the Hive. So, thank you, because it's really, I have learned so much about myself, which in turn helps me learn more about my kids. So it's not just about the kid. It's like the whole package. Everything has to work together. And that's, I couldn't have done it without you. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that. You're just a tremendous asset to the Hive and a member, and watching your growth has just been, a salve from my heart, a balm, the best soulful currency that I could receive. So I'm so pleased to know you and have you in the Hive and to watch you grow and get to work with you. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
All right, let's land this plane with 3 big takeaways. Yes, your child's meltdowns might mean they feel safe with you. It's beautiful, and that safety is your cue to get curious and not to excuse or dismiss their behavior and not get furious. And sometimes, as we discussed today through the beautiful examples that Steph brought, sometimes a meltdown is really a message that I need more from you. I need you to go that extra mile. I'm signaling to you that I need more connection, more structure, more understanding, more questions, more co-regulation. You know, in Stephanie's son's beautiful example, I've got these feelings that I can't name, and I'm going to signal with the strawberries, and I need you to probe and then give me a language to name what I'm feeling inside, right? So here's your homework this week. Watch for the next meltdown. And instead of thinking, oh, not again, ask yourself, what might this be signaling? Audit your connection. Have you had 10 minutes of true face-to-face, undistracted connection today? And if you're thinking, wow, Stephanie sounds amazing and I want to be her, I want to learn how to do this like she did. I want to get better at reading signals and responding with tools that actually work when my son says he hates strawberries, even though I know he loves them, then please accept the invitation and come join us in the Hive. In the Hive, I'll teach you how to pause, connect, decode the storm, and create personalized strategies that can bring calm and clarity to your home, just like Stephanie. So go to thehivecoaching.com to learn more and join us. And Steph, from the bottom of my heart, I want to say a big thank you, not only for being here, but I want to thank you for your heart, your honesty, and really your suggestion of this episode. I know that thousands of people are going to benefit from the topic and from our conversation. So thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. And I appreciate the time and letting me share this. I think it's really important for everybody to know. And I know if I struggle with it and I have learned from it, I knew that others would benefit from it too. So thank you for giving me the space to share.
Beautiful. Okay. Until next time, I'm wishing you peaceful parenting.
Thanks for listening to Real World Peaceful Parenting. If you want more info on how you can transform your parenting, visit thepeacefulparent.com. See you soon.